Every year, a select group of nations gathers behind closed doors to decide the fate of the global economy, climate policy, security, and even the future of democracy. You've heard the terms G7, G20, but do you really know what they mean? And more importantly, what do they mean for you? This isn't just politics. This is power. And in today's world, understanding the G7 and G20 is understanding who really runs the planet. Let's start with the G7, the group of seven. Think of it as the old guard of global leadership. Born in the 1970s during an oil crisis, it was originally the G6, just six major industrialized democracies trying to stabilize the world economy. Canada joined soon after, and the G7 was born. Today, the members are United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France, Japan, Italy, Canada. These seven countries represent only 10% of the world's population, but together they control nearly 45% of global wealth. That's more than $40 trillion in GDP. They're the economic engines of the Western world. But here's the catch. The G7 isn't a formal institution. There's no headquarters, no secretariat, no binding laws. It's more like an exclusive club, a dinner table where the most powerful democracies meet once a year to align their visions. And let's be honest, the United States has always been the leader of this club. From Reagan to Biden, American presidents have used the G7 to push for free markets, human rights, and collective security. Back in the Cold War, the G7 was a symbol of unity against Soviet influence. It was about showing the world that democracy and capitalism could deliver prosperity. But today, the world has changed. China is rising, Russia is aggressive, climate change is accelerating, and the global balance of power is shifting fast. That's where the G20 comes in. Enter the G20, the group of 20, formed in 1999, but only gaining real power after the 2008 financial crisis. The G20 is the big league. It includes the G7 plus China, India, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Mexico, Australia, Turkey, the European Union. Together, these 20 members represent 80% of global GDP and 2/3 of the world's population. This is where the real decisions are made, not just about money, but about climate, trade, pandemics, and war. But here's the twist. The G20 is messy. It's not just democracies. It includes authoritarian regimes like China and Russia, countries with questionable human rights records, nations with competing interests. So how does it work? Imagine trying to get 20 powerful leaders, each with their own agenda, to agree on anything. It's like herding cats with nuclear codes, but somehow they do. In 2008, the G20 coordinated a $5 trillion global stimulus to stop the financial system from collapsing. During the pandemic, they worked slowly to distribute vaccines. And in 2022, after Russia invaded Ukraine, the G7 and G20 became battlegrounds of ideology. The US and its allies tried to isolate Russia, but countries like India, China, and South Africa refused to fully condemn the invasion. Why? Because their economies depend on Russian oil, or they see the West as hypocritical. This is the new reality. America can't dictate the world order alone. And here's what keeps American policymakers up at night: the rise of alternatives. While the G7 and G20 still matter, countries like China are building their own clubs, BRICS, now expanding to include Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Ethiopia. They're creating new banks, new trade routes, and pushing to reduce reliance on the US dollar. So is the G7 losing relevance? Is the G20 becoming too divided to act? Let's bring this home. Why should you, an American, care about the G7 or G20? Because when the G7 agrees to sanction Russian oil, gas prices here at home go up, but so does pressure on Putin. When the G20 debates climate policy, it affects whether your state faces more wildfires, hurricanes, or floods. When the U.S. uses the G7 to push for tech regulations or AI standards, it shapes the apps you use, the jobs you'll have, and the privacy you keep. And when America leads, not just with power but with values, we don't just protect our interests. We defend democracy itself. But leadership isn't guaranteed. The world is watching. Will the U.S. stay united with its allies? Or will division at home weaken our voice abroad? The G7 and G20 aren't just about summits and handshakes. They're about vision, about whether the world will be shaped by cooperation or chaos, by freedom or authoritarianism. And in this battle, America still holds the pen. The G7 and G20 won't solve every problem, but they're the best tools we have to face them together. Because in a world of 7 billion people, no country can go it alone, not even the United States. So the next time you hear G7 or G20, don't tune out, lean in, because the decisions made in those rooms, they ripple across oceans and into your life. This isn't just their world, it's ours, and it's time we understood who's shaping it.